welcome to Sweet Home California. My name is Jennifer, and today I had a real treat. I was able to speak with Osiris last week, and so I'm going to be introducing you to him. I had him on for both a half an hour for my Sweet Home California show, which I'll put a link down in the description that I had on this channel last week, and then I also got to speak with him an additional half an hour on my other show, which is called Rainbows and Silver Linings, and that premieres weekly on This Way Network. So this is the episode that was on the Rainbows and Silver Linings episode, and then you can see the continuing conversation with my additional half hour with him in the link below. So anyhow, let me know what your thoughts are. If you have not heard of Osiris of Stuck in the Middle, then I highly encourage you to go over to his channel and subscribe and listen to his videos. They are very informative, researched, and reasoned, and he is for the most part in the middle, but he's come a long way. Well, anyhow, I'll let you hear it directly from him. So carry on. Thank you. Hello and welcome to Rainbows and Silver Linings. My name is Jennifer, and I also have a channel called Sweet Home California, so check me out over on that channel too. This channel is all about trying to find the positive in today's uncertain times, knowing that God has hung up his weapon of war, the bow, and is not directing it at us anymore, and he is not going to flood us and completely destroy humanity. So I think that is definitely a very good message to focus on. And also, by the way, reclaim our Christian symbols such as the rainbow. In any case, today I am going to be interviewing Osiris from Stuck in the Middle. And he has a very interesting story, and I will let him tell it. So without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce him to you. Hello, Osiris. How are you? I have you on mute. Unmute. There you go.
Sorry, what is, I didn't want to interrupt your intro. Thank you. What is good? I'm Osiris. I have a channel, literally just a dude in his basement. Started a channel called Stuck in the Middle, and it's been the most fun I've had in a long, long time.
How long have you been on YouTube?
So it's been it's a year and a half. So almost 2 years. I came on right after the George Floyd stuff.
Okay.
A couple months after the Summer of Love. That's when things started changing for me. I used to be more establishment based, believing what I'm seeing in the mainstream corporate media. And then when George Floyd happened, and for whatever reason, it woke me up. I saw people I respected start using terms like white supremacy and using it as a weapon against people they were previously friends with. And I'm like, what's happening here? And that's where I went down the rabbit hole, and I'm still down it.
I got to tell you, the Summer of Love was very divisive for our family as well. We have some folks in our family that I would say they use that term woke, but they don't use it like you just used it there. They I think in reality are still asleep and are still getting most of their news from CNN and that sort of thing. So, but what did your friends and family think about you actually awakening and no longer being woke?
It was they respect it first and foremost, which I like. They did, in a caring fashion, say it is risky. I'm not making any money off of this. Well, some of my videos are monetized, but it's not something you can live on. Let me just say that. But it's not for money. It's to get my voice out there. So they're worried about, right now we have a strong culture of cancel. I know that's kind of a controversial word, but I want to kind of give a different perspective with passion, but also with love. Because I think people who, whatever side you're on, most people have a good heart. And we just have to connect. We might disagree on how to address these things, but I want to try. Sometimes I don't live up to that. So let me be clear. I will be a little controversial at times, but I do want to lead with love.
That is a great message. And I totally agree with you. I think that most people that we might place on the left end of the spectrum is their heart is in the right place, that they want to see people do well. They want to see immigrants be able to experience that American dream and the benefits that they have. But yeah, our ways of getting there are certainly different. And I think that people on the right side of the political spectrum are thinking more along the lines of um, it needs to be more personal responsibility and less of the government kind of dictating how everything goes. Because there's so many
Yeah,
unintended
there's
consequences. I don't know if you've noticed any unintended consequences here in the last year or two.
oh yeah, a lot of consequences, and I think it's my big thing is I want to give another perspective. I don't want to force,
Mhm.
obviously, I don't want to force anybody to do anything, but if we only get one perspective, then we're not getting the full picture. And I think that helps me on my journey for truth. There's many
Mhm.
things that I'm learning about where I'm like, "Ooh, I was wrong there. Let me correct that." And we're kind of like on that journey together, trying to find out what's our truth in all these different topics and craziness going on in the world.
Mhm. Now, when I was on your channel a couple weeks ago, I noticed that it seemed like your subscriber base is in that middle range. You know, I find that on my Sweet Home California page, the vast majority, I'd say like 95, 97% are positive. I have, thumbs up 97, 98%. So I don't think I'm reaching anybody but the choir. So my ability to influence people to change their minds or anything, showing them my perspective is limited. But it seems like you are that stuck in the middle. Are you seeing where you get people, changing their minds? Do you get what kind of comments are you getting from your subscribers?
Yeah, that's the most fun is the comments that I'm getting. So I would say we're probably on the channel more, everyone's pretty much populist. And how I define that is if you look at a decision, do you err on the side of giving corporations power or people power? So I think
Mm-hmm.
on most decisions, everyone that follows the channel is populist, but I would say leaning a little bit right because the populist left right now is they're in some stuff that's divisive. So, but I do have people who are on both sides of the spectrum, and we do have civil kind of back and forth on that. So you're right, I do have, and I think that's why I came up with stuck in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be aligned necessarily with one side or the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tim Pool does that as well. That the left wants to say that he's now far right. He always describes himself as no, I'm right there in the middle. I'm very left on some things. I'm progressive on some things. Liberal, whatever the word may be. Um, I think he would prefer liberal rather than left. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, but because of that, he has a very big fan base, and he has that ability then maybe to change more minds than say someone like me, where I'm much more, I guess they would put me more on the conservative side rather than being in the middle. But has anybody like told you you've changed my life, you've opened my eyes, and yeah, now I believe that the establishment isn't necessarily telling us the truth.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen it worded quite that way, but I have seen people say, "Whoa, I never thought of it that way." And that's really
Mhm.
the whole point. And that's happened to me a lot where people give me the feedback on, "Whoa, I never thought about it that way." That's why I watch a lot of people, including your channel, to get a different perspective on things. That's a big problem we have. We were talking about abortion on the other show, and I think a
Mhm.
lot of people who are pro-choice, they don't even understand what the other side of the argument is. They don't care,
Mhm.
they don't know it, they don't watch it from anyone. They don't get it from corporate media. So if we don't know where each other stands, then what that does is it makes it really easy to hate somebody when you don't even know where they stand. Because talking with you, I don't know how anyone could hate you. You know what I mean? So they kind of take your voice, make it small, and then now it's easy to hate your position without knowing somebody. Like the whole idea of community has been kind of destroyed. That's why I think churches have been very important nowadays, because that's one of the
Mhm.
few places where people get together for community to
Mhm.
talk about all these issues and hash them out. And during the pandemic, it was very telling. I'm not a big church goer, but I watched this
Mhm.
stuff, and they shut down the churches. That's unconstitutional. Should have never happened. Saying that you can't congregate together in church,
Mhm.
that's insane. So, and there's a reason for that. It makes it easier to manipulate if you don't
Mhm.
have that involvement. So, you know,
Yeah, my sister made a point. My sister's very outgoing, and she will talk to anybody. And she said that part of the problem with what the last couple of years where they shut everybody down, everybody's wearing coverings. It really isolates people, and you're not as free and don't feel as free to talk to people while you're waiting in line at the checkout, in the grocery store, and just kind of commenting about things. And she said, Americans are so forthcoming with stuff. She said that she read a study where, as Americans, we might think, oh, or Canadians are thought of as being very friendly. But she said globally, the world thinks that Americans are overly friendly, that we just go up and talk to anybody and say, hey, how you doing? What is this? And, go to France and talk to people, Germany, we want to talk to anybody. And she said, that is what we kind of need to do as a country, because we have 50 different states, and we're scattered from, Hawaii all the way up to, the Arctic Circle. And we cover, three or four different time zones. And but because we all want to talk to each other, then we get to understand each other better, and we have that commonality. But these last 2 years have really made more of a divide in us, that we're not talking to each other anymore.
yep. And it's very telling that our representatives don't bring that up. And very often they'll even talk about big tech, but not many of them will bring it up from the standpoint of community. There are a
Hmm.
few, but when you look at whether there's like 535 or so in DC, that I don't hear more than 10 at most even bring up that topic. Yeah, so the pandemic comes, you can't go outside. This is done at the state level. More people are online. And when you get online, these algorithms are very powerful. And in
Hmm.
my opinion, they're anti-God, anti-religion.
Hmm.
So that makes us much easier to control. You're not in church, you're not with people in your community, you're online. Now we control you. So
Hmm.
TikTok has many different algorithms. They put you in different places. And I think I'm as bad at this as anybody. I got to get out, talk to my neighbors, talk to my community. And when you talk to people, there's no problems. You can relate, you can work things out, you can agree to disagree. But when they get you on these platforms, it's a whole different world.
It becomes more and more polarizing.
Mm-hmm.
I think I don't know if you have been keeping up with Elon Musk trying to purchase Twitter, and that's been put on hold. Well, why was it put on hold? Well, he's afraid that maybe the number of bots that are out there are a heck of a lot more than what has been said. So the consequences of that, he's saying that with these algorithms, that let's say if you have a conservative perspective and you comment on that, without the algorithm, without bots that are automatically steering the conversation, you may have some people that are supporting you and some people who are encouraging you to change your mind, and you're influenced by that. If all my friends agree with me, then I'm much more likely to hold my view. But if my friends that I consider, close are telling me no, you need to relook it, then I'm more likely to change my mind. So they're doing this online with people who are bots, who are not your real friends. Like, for instance, I get a ton of people that I thought I was already friends with them. Why are they asking me to friend them again? Well, maybe it's because it's a fake account and they want to start commenting on my stuff to influence me in a different direction. So yeah, it's like these bots are dangerous because they are trying to steer the direction and trying to tell you what to think.
Yes, and one that is a big optimistic moment to me when Elon Musk stepped in. The deal isn't final, it could fall through, but even if it does, he has exposed like this. He's exposed the potential of bots. And what I think is a lot of people knock Twitter as being a toxic environment. And I think that's why. It's because of the bots. Most people, I don't think they subscribe to a lot of these crazy ideologies that you might see out there. So if you
Mm,
don't tip the scales, if you don't tip the scales in the favor of this minority, not minorities, but this issue that the majority doesn't agree on,
Mhm.
then most people are going to get along on Twitter. And
Mhm.
so I think they're actually tipping the scales to prop
Putting their
up.
thumb on it.
Yep, they're putting their thumb on it. Yeah, they're putting the thumb on the scale to prop up ideas that most people in the country don't agree with. And to
Mhm.
me, that's where some of this tension comes from. So you're propping up this idea, and then you've got people saying, wait a second, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. And then you
Mhm.
prop up the people who do agree with it. It's not balanced. Most people, I think, walking around the world would be able to have if opinions in the middle and talk about it and not get into arguments. If you let it happen organically, I think there would be a lot less friction on Twitter.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Going back to the Roe v. Wade issue, um, a lot of people don't understand exactly what that means. That if the Supreme Court does do what it was leaked that they plan on doing, uh, it could be. A lot of people think that it will outlaw that event entirely. That people will not have access to that at all. Do you watch Steven Crowder at all?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Big
he had
fan.
a kind of man on the street where he was interviewing people and asking them
Mm-hmm.
what they thought about it, if they've been following it, what do they think is going to happen, and a huge, of course, he gets to pick and choose who he's going to highlight, but assuming that he's honest, and I believe that that he's trying to give us this information, I think is true, that people are uninformed on what it is going to mean. And so a number of people thought it would outlaw it entirely. Other people thought that if this codification, because Senate was trying to put in a women's health protection bill, that would just codify Roe. They didn't realize that this new bill would actually legalize it all the way up until birth. And most people, when you ask them, well, what do you think there should be some restrictions? The vast majority of people agree with what the original Roe v. Wade was, which put it in about the first trimester. But there are states like California and New York and Virginia under the previous governor that no, they wanted it to go all the way to the point of birth, and the vast majority of people are against that.
Yeah, perfect example of they control the corporate media, obviously, and then they control the social media to prop up this topic that, as a male, I feel uncomfortable even getting into because I do agree that it is a woman's body, but what they do is abortion's not a topic that you celebrate. So they've
Hmm.
almost turned it into something where, back in the day, even Joe Biden was safe but rare, I believe is how
Hmm.
they
Safe,
described
legal,
it.
and rare. Yeah.
Safe, legal, and rare. And now it's radical. It's
Hmm.
pro-abortion. It's celebrating it. We're
Shout
talking
out.
about yeah. We're talking about something that is not something that we celebrate. No matter what side you're on, this isn't something to celebrate. But that's what they've
Hmm.
kind of turned it into. They amp up the minority. Like you're right. Most people agree with the safe, legal, and rare. So if you
Hmm.
let Twitter go, if you let social media go, which is the big boiling pot, organically, I think that's where people would line, but they don't
Hmm.
want that. That's why there's this big outrage for Elon buying Twitter. He might
Hmm.
let that happen. They know their ideas are not popular.
Right.
So if they don't put their thumb on the scale, people are going to figure out and say, you know what? Wait, this actually just leaves it up to the states, number one.
Hmm.
And number two, are we really for this? Are we celebrating this? What's wrong with safe, legal? Those type of discussions would happen instead of what we're having now. I don't know if you've seen some of the stuff. It's just, you know, people just making light of it. There was somebody on one of the corporate media channels that was like, I can't even repeat it. They were just like, man, just casually saying I would abort my child. It's just like, that's not organic. That's forced.
Hmm. Yeah, and again, it's just trying to make things normalize it, and I honestly believe that we'll become more of a culture of life by focusing on life and showing how it's valuable and doing everything we can to help people that are in crisis pregnancies, people to help women because that's who have pregnancies, but the whole family unit to help them be able to afford a child. The other options of providing for adoption is another thing. I mean, we have so many people who are adopted from foreign countries because there just aren't any to adopt within America that are infants. Of course, there's foster care, but that's not the goal of foster care. Is not adoption. The goal is to reunify them with their parents. But yeah, my daughter's going into
Yeah.
foster care. Well, in
Oh, really?
uh, DSS, Department of Social
Mm.
Services, and her focus is going to be on the prevention. So she's going to be helping to make sure that kids are being taken care of, so and that the parents have the skills that they need so that they don't lose custody of their children. So I'm really proud of her. She starts today, filling out a lot of
You should
paperwork.
be, yeah, you should be proud. I mean, she's way more powerful than anything that I'm doing or even any elected officials doing. She's trying
Hmm.
to affect culture, educate people. I mean, that's way more powerful than anything else that in this discussion is really being there at the ground level, helping people understand their options. That's power with the people.
Hmm. So I'm glad to hear, though, that you said that your friends and family, the main concern that they had for you is that you're putting these views on YouTube and how that'll affect you. But they haven't questioned you as to how can you possibly not believe the mainstream narrative anymore. Have they changed their minds? Have you influenced them to be like, oh yeah, maybe what CNN is saying is not 100% the truth?
I think a little bit. I have two younger brothers. I think maybe my middle brother. I'd have to ask him. I haven't really asked him that question, but he's a critical thinker, so he will come up with his own path. My youngest brother is probably more into the establishment, but that's where I was before the Floyd stuff. He's
Hmm.
more just believing everything basically from the Democratic establishment standpoint.
Hmm.
So I haven't really converted them, but I'm not trying to. We have these
Sure.
conversations. I don't specifically try to convert anybody or anything like that. I just want to have conversations, but it has to be based on facts. So
Hmm.
very often we will discuss the facts first and then go off of that. What's happening in our country is a lot of stuff is being based on emotion, like the Roe
Hmm.
v. Wade decision. Like you said, a lot of people don't even know what it really means to strike it down.
Hmm.
So they're just based on emotion. Whoa, this is something I might need to get amped up about, but they don't really talk. Oh, what's the fact? What's the downside? What's the alternative? Do people even understand that striking it down might be good law? It might be a good constitutional decision, regardless of how you feel. It
Hmm.
might be the right constitutional choice, and then you have to go another avenue.
Yeah, because a lot
So,
of people don't
uh,
don't realize that wasn't a law. It was just
yeah,
basically an interpretation of the Constitution that, as you said, didn't have a really much of a legal basis.
yeah.
But
So
that's
that's
why,
why they
yeah, the Congress was trying to make a law, that codification of Roe thing, but it was definitely a stretch. It wasn't just Roe; it was way beyond Roe.
Yeah, I believe it was I think it was Kavanaugh that said, "Why are we even discussing this? It should be up to Congress or something like that." And even if Congress were to make a law one way or the other, I don't know if that would be constitutional either. That would be challenged as well. I think leaving
Hmm.
it up to the states is the right decision. I am personally pro-life. Like in my personal life, I would never want. I'm married now, but I would never want a woman I'm with to do that, go through that process. I would try to um, persuade them not to. But
Hmm.
ultimately, legislatively, I am pro choice. It's up to the woman. And I would hope a woman wouldn't want to abort a child, a late term, pregnancy. That would be awful.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Um, but one of those things that we were talking about, supporting after the child is born, and I know that there were some questions that I received from your audience as to, do they support the baby after it's born. And I mentioned some things like the Knights of Columbus and CareNet and Save the Stork. There's, St. Vincent de Paul Society. There are a number of charities out there that are, pro-life, not just pro-birth. And but yet here we are in a situation now where families that are struggling don't necessarily even have access to formula. And obviously that is negatively affecting many Americans right now. Have you been keeping up with that?
Yeah, I have. I'm very concerned about it because this is not something that just snuck up. And Joe Biden said something to the effect of, I'll paraphrase, something like, I'm not a mind reader. Somebody asked him about it. He said
Really?
something to the effect of, yep. He said something to the effect of, I'm not a mind reader. And that really bothered me because people have been talking about this since January.
Mm-hmm.
And the FDA has been involved. There was no mind reading that needed to be involved here. We are very focused on Ukraine. We're focused on
Mm-hmm.
all these other issues. This is the most basic necessity of a society, is to feed its young. There's nothing more
Mm-hmm.
basic than that. When you talk about food, you start with infants. You start with very young babies. And for the administration to say this came up as a surprise is unacceptable, and it makes me wonder what else is a surprise. But it is red pilling. I mean, it is waking people up. I think a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people are waking up to, wait a second, how is this? How did this happen? Maybe we need to go another direction with our leaders. But we talked about community. To my knowledge, what they did before there was baby formula was they would just get together and have mothers who breastfed. The
Mm-hmm.
way wet nurses, I think they're called wet nurses.
Mm-hmm.
And my point is, there was a community solution,
Mm-hmm.
and we can't leave we can't even leave food for our babies up to the government. Like, we can't
Mm-hmm.
leave anything in their trust. That's why I really like your channel. You kind of talk about prepping and doing
Mm-hmm.
things on your own and learning how to be a handy person. You said take care of your debt. And so what you're basically saying is keep power with yourselves. Don't depend on these people. Our federal
Mm-hmm.
government didn't even know we were running out of baby formula.
Yeah.
That's got to be a sign to say, let's get back to community. I don't know if it's wet nurses or what it looks like, but let's get back to us helping each other. We will have to hold them accountable, but we can't
Mm-hmm.
depend on them for our lives.
Yeah. Well, I ran a, children's consignment store and for many years, and that was one of the things that if women can't breastfeed for whatever reason, but breast milk is best. It has the antibodies, it has all the nutrients that are needed. So if the child isn't actually allergic to breast milk, which sometimes happen, and then you need to have those more expensive formulas, and that's where it's really critical, is if the child has a problem with being able to digest breast milk. But if they are, and the mother just can't produce it herself, check on your local Facebook groups. Look for your local La Leche League. They're the ones that really connect and help mothers with breastfeeding. You may be able to get other women who have stored up breast milk, because there are pumps out there, so you can store it up and freeze it, and it can be used for months later. Their child may be weaned at this point, it can go to someone else that needs it. So again, the community and looking into that for help, I would highly recommend that
Yeah.
you look for La Leche League.
Yeah. It's funny how everything ties in. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why people start wondering if this is I don't think this is incompetence. This pure
Mm-hmm.
speculation. So the reason why I bring that up is that should give us more motivation for community to
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, in our area, what mothers are breastfeeding, and
Mm-hmm.
you can. That's what we did with our children. My wife pumped, like, that was a man. She was a pumping machine on this pump, and then we would freeze it.
Mm-hmm.
And babies
So you
go,
know what I'm
as you
talking
know,
about.
yeah, babies go through that stuff like boom, it's done.
Mm-hmm.
They go through it quickly. So that's a scary
Mm-hmm.
thing to not
Mm-hmm.
know where you're going to get the next meal, because they go through that stuff fast.
Mm-hmm.
But you maybe you get together on a social media app or even in person, even better, and say, hey, who's breastfeeding? People freeze it? Get together and find a solution. We've got to start doing that, because these politicians are leading, whether it's or not, intentional or not, they are leading us down a path of very bad places.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. I think subsidiarity, the concept of subsidiarity is fixing things at the lowest level possible. And unfortunately today, too many people jump straight to the federal government. We've got a problem, we got to get the federal government to solve it. But the federal government does things like locking down a whole state like Wyoming, where it's like an average of one person per square mile.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of yeah, just do it on the local level, and people can come up with creative ways, and they feel they're a lot more involved on the local level. But now, because we've abandoned the local level, then you don't have the people who feel like they can make a difference, and so they're not getting involved. But we have to get back to that. Like, for instance, I just signed up for being on the being a poll worker again for the January or the June 7th primary, and then I'll be in there for the general election as well. But yeah, people need to get back involved in knowing their neighbors and everything.
Yep, and I have to do that as well. I've been doing it with school. Now I do have
Great.
a selfish motivation because I want to keep an eye on, like, is everything okay up in here? Like, you're not
Hmm.
teaching what you shouldn't be teaching, type of thing. But it also does help with community. You meet the other parents, you meet the kids. The kids know me now as my
Yeah.
son's dad. So that's
Hmm.
a little bit of community. There's so many different ways you can do it. I think this is community. I mean, I know it's virtual, but meeting
Hmm.
you, talking with you, and trying to build and see what we can do is community too.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, I am going to wrap it up for the rainbows and silver linings. I am going to continue this conversation with Osiris on the Sweet Home California channel. So make sure you follow the link down below, and we'll put a link to that discussion as well. But in any case, for rainbows and silver linings, I really appreciated having you on today, Osiris. And make sure that you go over to his channel and follow him over there as well, and you'll get a different perspective, and that'll be a good thing. So anyhow, God bless, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks so much for watching. And if you're still here with me, I really appreciate it. Make sure you watch today's new episode of Rainbows and Silver Linings, which is premiering over on This Way Network. And that episode is with Tom West. And he is an up and coming YouTuber that deserves to have a lot more followers than he does, as he does daily meditations where he talks about the scripture, and anyhow, it's just very uplifting, and he ties it to what's going on in current events as well. But that's his main focus, is spreading the word. So I hope that you will consider watching that show as well over on This Way Network, and the link will be in the description. God bless, and talk to you next time.